But should this come closer to me, like this?
It's just not to have the picture.
Oh, not to have the mic in the picture. Oh, got it, yes. Well, it's okay. You don't have to take a picture of me.
마이크 됐어.
Okay, we'll try this again. Sorry for the premature start before. I'm Abby Leonard. I am a regular member here and the chair of the Freedom of Press Committee. And today we're very happy to welcome Deborah Krisher-Steele, who was the deputy publisher and owner of Cambodia Daily until earlier this month when it was hit with a large tax bill from the government of Cambodia. So can you hear me? I'm just going to leave it there. I'm just going to hand it over now to Deborah Krisher-Steele to make some initial remarks.
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Abby. Okay. Maybe some of you know me. It's nice to be back in my old stomping grounds. I'm the daughter of Bernard Krisher, who was a very active member of this club. I'm here. I mean, I think he would have liked to have made this press conference today, but he's rather frail. He has a heart condition that makes it difficult for him to move around. So just to introduce myself, I'm Bernie's daughter. This is my brother, Joseph. And today I'm going to talk about what's happened to us in Cambodia. Just to give you a little bit of background, my father, Bernie, was a Newsweek bureau chief during the 60s and 70s. And he covered Japan and he covered Korea, but he was also able to cover Indonesia and Cambodia. And the reason he was able to cover Indonesia and Cambodia was because when Bob McCabe, the correspondent in Hong Kong, was blacklisted in Indonesia, he couldn't get in. And I guess my father was very eager to get in and cover Indonesia. And when President Sukarno came to Japan in 1963, my father sort of accosted him in the bookstore at the Imperial Hotel and started chatting him up. And just in that conversation, my father got an invitation to Indonesia. And later that year, he went to Indonesia, and I don't know if it was his first trip or his second trip. He met Prince Sihanouk, who was a friend of President Sukarno. And he got an invitation to come to Cambodia. So from about 63 to 65, my father had access to Cambodia, and he wrote stories in Newsweek about Cambodia. In 65, amidst a lot of tension and anger towards the United States, Sihanouk actually broke diplomatic relations with the United States based on an article that my father wrote. And there were demonstrations in the streets. And the problem with that article was that my father had quoted a student who said the Queen Mother owned the brothels. And that was Lèse Majesté, you don't insult the royal family. So my father was kicked out. There were demonstrations all over Cambodia, and he really didn't have access to Cambodia for a while. And then in 71, there was a coup, and Prince Sihanouk was, basically not able to come back to his country when he was getting medical treatment in France, and another government, Lon took over. And sometime during, I'm not sure what the timeline was, but my father actually reached out to Prince Sihanouk and sent him a birthday card. He went to the American pharmacy here and bought a Hallmark card that said happy birthday and sent it to Sihanouk. And after that, they just became like good friends. They kissed and made up. And my father met him at the United Nations during peace talks, and visited him during the 70s in China, where he was given a safe haven by Zhou Enlai. They were, Sihanouk and Zhou Enlai were close friends, and also Pyongyang, Sihanouk and Kim Il-sung were good friends. So between those two countries, my father visited Sihanouk and had access to those countries. And during that time, Sihanouk always said, come back with me when I can come back and rehabilitate my country. And I actually accompanied my father on some of the trips in the late 80s. We wrote a book together. My father interviewed Sihanouk about the leaders he admired. And he had many, de Gaulle, I don't know, Sukarno. It's a book, Charisma and Leadership. And there were all these qualities that he, I think, aspiring to go back to Cambodia. He was studying all these leaders and looking at their good qualities and put that into a book. And so we said, sure, we'll come back and help you, really not thinking this day was ever going to come. But in 1991, the Paris Peace Accords were signed, and all the sides, the Khmer Rouge, there was ceasefire, all the sides that were in this civil war wanted peace. And Sihanouk said he's going to come back to Cambodia in November 1991, and will you be there? So my father and I flew to Cambodia, and we were waiting on the tarmac of the airport, and Sihanouk flies in and he comes down, and my father is standing back in the with the photographers, with all the photographers back there. But I stood there with a group of schoolgirls. They were all dressed up in their Cambodian dresses, and I was just in my, I don't know, in a dress like this. And it was Princess Monique who said, Debbie, what are you doing here? And I said, well, we said we're going to be back, so we're back. And she said, where are you staying? And I said, we're staying at the Cambodiana Hotel. So we go back to the hotel, and within a few hours, his chef de cabinet, who was Trung Mali, who later became ambassador to Japan, was there looking for us, and he gave us this invitation, and he said, we want you to come to dinner at the palace tomorrow night. And so we were expecting it to be a big party with lots of people, that we would be one of the guests, but it turned out that it was a private dinner, and Prince Sihanouk said, I have to rehabilitate this country and I need your help. And so my father said, well, I want to start a newspaper. And it's always been my father's dream to run a newspaper. In fact, when he was a little boy in Queens, he had his own little mimeograph machine. He was an editor of a little magazine. He had all his friends, write stories, and he basically ran it on barters. Like they would give him, people would put in advertising, and then he would get barter. So he had this feeling that he wanted to do this again, and so he said, I'm going to start this newspaper. And Sihanouk said, well, they're going to kill you or they're going to arrest you. And he said, if they try to arrest me or if they try to close me down, I'm going to make sure that we can deliver the news into Cambodia somehow. So he made the I should have brought a copy, but he made the newspaper this size, it's like an A4 size, folded, it's A3. And it's actually very expensive to make this kind of newspaper because you have to cut it. But it was always in this format so that it could have been faxed from overseas. And so he felt that by starting a newspaper that promoted free press, it would help establish one of the pillars of democracy, that a democratic society, a civil society, needs to have a responsible press. And so the newspaper's mission was to be very accurate in its news. It had no opinion, it had no editorials. We got a lot of free news services, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Kyodo. Many people donated their news services free for this newspaper so that it could be reprinted in the Cambodia Daily. We had a Khmer section that was translated articles, and we hired expat journalists who were very seasoned. They had experience in a newspaper before they came, and then we trained Cambodian journalists. So we have like dozens of Cambodian journalists who started their careers at the Cambodia Daily, who are now our alums working for Reuters, who are working for Radio Free Asia, Voice of America, AP, AFP, the German press. So we have a lot of journalists who sort of come through our system and then go to other places to work for other media. So for 24 years, we have been publishing this very, very honest newspaper, and it covered very sensitive topics, including trafficking, illegal logging, corruption, and the government really never liked us, but always used it as proof that it has a free press. Lately, well, over the past year or so, the rhetoric has been very sort of aggressive against us, and there were sort of cartoons that they created that made Human Rights Watch. They lumped us together with Human Rights Watch, Global Watch, and the Cambodia Daily, trying to destroy Cambodian society. And I think it became sort of reflective of the nervousness in the government, within the government, about the kinds of coverage that is having an effect on the way people are viewing them. So this rhetoric was beginning about a year ago. There's also this other rhetoric that we were hearing by government officials and by the Prime Minister, that the Americans are trying to start some sort of color revolution and trying to push out this government and this very distrust towards Americans. And so what happened I'll just fast forward a little bit. What happened to us was that around the time when the National Democratic Institute was kicked out of Cambodia for their programs, and their programs actually was, they were teaching all the political parties election strategies, including the ruling party. But the ruling party, the CPP, the Cambodian People's Party, they really didn't want, they were afraid that the opposition was getting more popular, and they didn't like that NDI was working with them and perhaps providing some strategies that were going to help them. So NDI was kicked out, all the expats were kicked out of Cambodia, and then Radio Free Asia, and Voice of America, which had bought airtime in about 15 different FM stations, usually Radio Free Asia and VOA. They broadcast using shortwave, but shortwave is not a popular machine, popular kind of radio in Cambodia. So they had been buying airtime in various locations so that people in remote areas can listen to them. Those stations were closed down. Then there was the arrest of Kem Sokha, who was the opposition leader, and he was arrested without a warrant. They later charged him with treason, and he was actually arrested on September, the midnight at September 3rd, and on Sunday, the foreign ministry invited all the diplomats, the head of the diplomatic corps, to attend a meeting. And it was one of those, I don't know, it feels like something that happened in the Cultural Revolution, but everybody sits down, and they showed a film, and it was already a very well-made video. I've seen it, and it says in English, "Why was Kem Sokha arrested?" And then it goes to footage of Kem Sokha from 4 years ago, talking about how he's invited to the United States, and he's receiving a lot of support from the United States, and how they're giving him strategies of winning an election, that it should be grassroots and not top down. And then it jumps to something where he talks about, well, look at what happened to Milosevic. There was a color revolution. Okay, so they show this footage, and then they stop and they say, somebody here is trying to overthrow the government. Okay. Hours later, the American ambassador wasn't seen. He had to leave for a family emergency. Okay. So in the midst of all this, the Cambodia Daily, the very bold newspaper, gets a $6.3 million tax bill. Now, if anybody here works for a newspaper, you know how little money it makes, and you know that it's losing a lot of money. So it was an impossible figure, and it was also a figure that just came out of nowhere. We said, can you explain this to us? And they said, documents. What documents? We haven't been audited. So we were really surprised to get this tax bill. And it's actually not that unusual for businesses to get this crazy, crazy tax bill. Like some businesses get a $25 million tax bill, and it's this long negotiation that maybe will turn into $100,000. So, okay, so that's the way it works in Cambodia. But what was highly unusual for us was that that tax bill was posted on a website called Fresh News. Fresh News is a government-friendly website, and it was posted on Fresh News before we got a copy. And I first thought, well, is this like some low-level clerk that's doing some mischief? So I wrote the head of the tax department. I said, we can talk about this tax bill, but let's do it professionally and between us. And then I wrote a letter saying, you're talking about some time period where my father owned the newspaper from 2006 to 2016, and I had nothing to do with it. I just bought the assets, and he will take responsibility. Can you write the letter to him? And then my father writes a letter saying, I don't owe $6.3 million. Plus, I've not taken a penny from this newspaper. I've donated any profit that I ever made to build schools in Cambodia, now worth about $39 million, okay, if you look at what they're worth right now. And I should get credit for it. So he writes that letter to them. And then they write back and they say, well, you can get 5% of your donations can get credit, but we deny your denial, and you must pay $6.3 million by September 4th. And then they posted it on Facebook. Now, if they, not Fresh News, now if they were really earnestly wanting the money from us, why would you do that and disrupt our business? So it's so I'm not saying that anything more than that, but it was a very strange tactic by the government to do that, because they don't normally do that. It's usually a very quiet negotiation with the tax department. So the moment that second letter went up on Fresh News, all of my advertisers pulled out because they believed that my newspaper wasn't going to exist after September 4th. So cancellation of advertising, cancellation of subscriptions, and the printer was afraid that this was political. My tax agency said this is political. And so we tried all kinds of sort of back channels to try to talked to the tax department, but they wouldn't budge, and we had to declare force majeure and close our operations on September 4th. So we had to, let go of our staff. I'm trying to find a way to give them their severance pay, and we had to close our newspaper. They said that they were going to seize our assets and seize our bank accounts. They did seize our assets, they did seize our bank accounts, but they also seized our NGO bank accounts. My father had sort of various projects in Cambodia. One was the Cambodia Daily. Another is a charity hospital, the Sihanouk Hospital Center of Hope, which provides free medical care to patients who are poor. And then we have an NGO that builds rural schools all over Cambodia, gives them computers, English lessons. We have a scholarship for girls who can't go to school because the parents are so poor. Vegetable gardens, a girls' mentorship program to help them stay in school. And then we also have a center where we have 40 foster children. These foster children have lost their parents to HIV/AIDS, and they actually have nowhere to go. So if that foster care center collapses, these kids will have to go back to the streets. So they froze the bank accounts for the NGO as well. So currently, we can't get any money in for anything. They also froze my husband's bank account and said that unless you pay $6.3 million, you can't leave the country. So they're asking for this ransom money to get him out, which we can't come up with, and he's stuck. So he's stuck in Cambodia. He can't, they said that they've told all the border police that if he tries to leave the country, that they will be arrested. So I have a husband who's been taken hostage. I have a newspaper that shut down, but now my concern also is how am I going to feed the 40 foster children? So that is what it is. That's my current situation. So
Thank you very much. That was extremely powerful, and I appreciate you sharing everything. I'd like to open the floor to starting with the working press. Any questions we have, can you raise your hands, and then I'll invite people to come up. Yes.
Okay, I'm AC Takahashi from NHK World. Okay, I'm a newcomer. My name is Eisuke Takahashi from NHK World. Seemingly that there has been a tension between United States and Cambodia starting from last year. And do you think the closure of your newspaper is a byproduct of the tension in bilateral relation? And if so, are you expecting some kind of a political intervention from the American government?
Well, I can't really put those dots together. I think that's for the experts to do. So I'm not going to say that it is definitely related. It may be just coincidental that we are Americans. So I can't really say what the rationale was to close our newspaper, if it was because we were Americans, or if it was because we were writing those stories, or if they really want $6.3 million from us. I think America's influence within Cambodia has gotten much weaker. There's a lot more friendliness between the Cambodian government and China. I think, I think that there's that shift. I think the Cambodian government used to care much more about what America thought of them. They may not need America so much. They have China.
And are you expecting some kind of political support from American government or the Japanese government, perhaps?
Well, I have been talking to the Gaimusho. They know what's going on. They're keeping a very watchful eye. They will also be the ones drafting the human rights benchmarks for Cambodia, I think next month. I think they're probably looking at everything, including our situation, and I imagine that those will be addressed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anthony Rowley, Singapore Business Times. The newspaper started under Sihanouk,
Yes.
and presumably during that period was relatively free, but it continued to operate under Hun Sen. So what has changed? I mean, has even under Hun Sen, the climate was fairly friendly towards the newspaper. So what do you think more recently has changed that could have precipitated this? And also on the question of China, I mean, I'm rather ignorant as to China's actual relations with Cambodia. I know they're fairly close. Have they become closer recently in some way?
I think they've been getting closer and closer. If you've been to Cambodia, you will see how much investment there is from China. Most of it is Chinese investment. So yes, I would say they've gotten closer. I think they're very close. You mentioned the freedom of press under Sihanouk. I think what has changed is probably that the ruling party used to really win in a landslide. And the last elections in 2013, they really didn't do that well. And I think that nervousness is there, that they are worried about critical voices, they're worried about losing their stronghold. I think that nervousness is very much there right now. And, you know, why do you need to arrest the opposition leader? Why can't there be? Why are they obliterating that possibility? There won't be an opposition. It will just be a one-party election. There won't be a choice. So
just quick on that. Why did they not do so well? Why did the ruling party not do so well in this last election?
I actually I don't really know the reason why they didn't do so well. I'm not really I don't know.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else from the working press who has a question? Yes.
Very glad we can welcome you to the club. Your father was an icon. I was with him actually in that house in Peking, in the Sihanouk house, enormous house. And Sihanouk showed a video of the then emerging Khmer Rouge. And in those days, they were the good guys, and Lon Nol was the bad guys. But that's by the way. What I'm curious about is Hun Sen was identified as pro-Vietnam initially, and on that basis was blacklisted by Western governments in a very ugly manner, I might add, when Cambodia really did need help. And now, of course, he's welcomed by the Chinese. Is there and China and Vietnam, of course, don't like each other. So it seems to be a very curious triangle. Were you aware of that,
Well,
involved with that?
Yeah, I can't really comment on that shift. I think, though, I can say that the Prime Minister is very intent on raising the GDP of Cambodia. He wants it to be, I guess, 7%. The tremendous amount of investment that China's putting into Cambodia, you know, raises that. So, you know, I think there's a relationship there.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Yes, please.
My name is Hiroki Fujita, a freelance journalist, affiliated with Yuka Fuji. First, I have to apologize, and I promised your father to bring out your father's biography, but somehow I haven't published it yet, but I'll work it out. But, your father perhaps is the one journalist that has the perhaps most, famous Japanese friends. From the because your father had one-on-one exclusive interview with the emperor Showa, 32 minutes. Unbelievable. And also, the right-wing side, you had your father interviewed with many people, Kodama Yoshio, Mishima Yukio, so on and so on. So there are a lot of people from both sides, right or left, many people who like to, support your father and what your father has done in Cambodia. So this is my question. What do you really expect to happen in Cambodia, and how, what kind of help do you expect we, the journalists?
Well, I think it's helpful to be able to tell our story. I think things change. I think it is what it is right now. I don't think it's going to stay this way. I think it's indicative of what is happening in Cambodia, the tension, the government wanting to crack down. I think things will calm down in the future. But, and actually people have told me not to speak because it may hurt me to speak. Like, keep it all quiet the way you're being harassed by the tax department, or just don't talk about this. But I can't really do that because it's sort of like being abused and not talking about it. So I'm just going to talk about it. And whatever consequences come, maybe they will arrest my husband, but he's willing to be arrested, if they're going to arrest him, and let the world know about it. I think, people need to just know what's going on. And as journalists, I hope you can tell people what I've told you today. And just sort of going back to your mention of my father being very active as a journalist, in fact, because he was such an active journalist, he was able to do what he was able to do in Cambodia. And it was all the people that he met through, just interviewing them, writing stories about them. When he started his projects in Cambodia, Toyota came in, Maeda Kensetsu came in, Kenzo Tange came in. They all came in and they gave him something and they helped him. So, this whole project, all these projects in Cambodia wouldn't have been possible had he not been an active journalist in Japan. So.
How many schools?
We have built 560 schools.
Short follow-up question, but before I ask the question, Nayan Chanda, who is one of my former colleagues in the Far Eastern Economic Review, is now editor of the Yale Online Review in the States. Have you been in touch with him? If not, I think perhaps you ought to.
I would love to.
I'll send you his email address.
Thank you.
Just on Chinese investment, has your newspaper, has your father's paper been critical of Chinese investment in any way in Cambodia?
I think they have written stories that, like illegal logging that's done by Chinese companies. Yes, we've written stories that are critical of some Chinese activities. But I don't think China is behind this closure. I don't think they're telling Prime Minister Hun Sen or anybody to close us.
Do you have any specific plan to rescue your husband from Cambodia or rescue your newspaper? Are you planning to launch some kind of a media campaign? Well, obviously this press conference is part of it, but do you have any specific plans for that kind of things?
Well, Regarding my husband, yes, I would like to rescue him, but I don't think he should try to cross the border. We're putting together a legal team to help him. We've gotten so much support from these organizations that protect journalists, and they're willing to send money. It's actually been really overwhelming, the kind of support that people have reached out to us to help. So yes, I would like to help him. I would like to have him go through a process. I want that process to be transparent. I want everyone to see what happens in the process. It's all that. So I'm hopeful that the process will work and he'll be released. Yep.
Are you planning to continue?
Oh,
your
the newspaper?
online?
At the moment, no. At the moment, it's not viable, so.
Hi, my name is Jarrett Banks. I'm a freelance journalist. I was wondering if you could talk about the rumors about Hun Sen's health issues at all?
I just heard rumors, but I don't know anything more than the rumors.
And succession plans?
I don't know anything about succession plans. I imagine he would like one of his sons to take over. I don't know what's going on in that household, but yeah, so I don't really know what his plans are, but I think they are talking about it. I think people are talking about it, at least. Yeah.
I'm Hiro from Taishin. I learned from your talk that your father and Prince Sihanouk had warm relationship, but I understand he passed away. I mean,
Yes.
King passed away in 2012, and I wonder if there were any signs. I mean, so before this August, when the tax issue came up, and I understand you also. The ownership transferred from your father to you.
Me, yes, yes.
In this April, so
Yes.
can you explain?
Yes, so,
this? Thank you.
okay, so I'll explain. What happened was, okay, so my father was publishing this newspaper under the license of the Ministry of Information, and it was not a registered entity. He was just publishing, he was selling some advertising. Most of it was actually run on a lot of capital that he put in sort of the late 1990s. He just put in a lot of capital, and it was sort of dwindling the money away. It really made no profit. So he and many other Cambodian newspapers were running without registering with the Ministry of Commerce. There was a law in 1995 that said businesses need to register with the Ministry of Commerce, but it's really not, it wasn't enforced until 2016. So they came and they asked us to register with the Ministry of Commerce and get a VAT number, and we said, okay. And we were also told that there might be some negotiations of back taxes. So I was actually prepared for this kind of tax discussion, and I had an accounting firm, a tax firm, work with me. It's highly unusual for, though I learned that it's highly unusual for any company to be taxed back 10 years. That's very unusual. It's usually 2 or 3 years. And I was actually prepared for that. So I registered my company in April, and I got a VAT number, and took withholding and was doing everything right. And then the tax discussion was supposed to happen. But instead of a normal tax discussion, it was a $6.3 million tax bill that was posted on Fresh News. So that's the background of my ownership. But so I owned it from April to the day before the closure. And the day before the closure, my father was so disgusted with the way I was treated that he said, I'm taking it back. It's not yours anymore. I'm taking it back. So it's not mine.
So I can understand there were there were no any like warnings or you
Oh, no
you
warn-
didn't have any sense of
No, no
danger
warnings. No.
before August.
No, I had no warnings. It just came out of the blue, very, very suddenly, with no audit, no documentation, no nothing. You know, I thought I was reading Kafka's novel. That's what it felt like.
Were you under you? Did you feel any pressure from the government before August, like increasing pressure?
There was increasing rhetoric, okay, against us. There were also some things that happened, like we had an embezzlement in the circulation department, and we tried to go to the police to report the embezzlement, and they said, no, we're not going to take the police report because your paper is anti-government. So there are small things like that even the police won't help us. This wasn't always the case. This is recent.
Yes. And then after this, we'll open it.
Sorry, I didn't identify myself properly before. Gregory Clark, freelance. Cambodia and the elite used to be French-speaking. You published in English. Have the elite, were they all wiped out by the Khmer Rouge, or is there? I'm just curious about your if there's a linguistic problem.
No, well, I think the elite have just gotten old. Your elite have gotten older, so maybe there are not that many pure French speakers left. But English is the preferred foreign language to learn. Everybody wants to learn English. So now the elite will learn English.
My name is Stefano Carré for the Italian Economic Daily. Apart from the urgent issue of your husband, do you think it will make sense to try to pay this bill, or do you think in the current situation the regime will find another pretext to keep, to close down the newspaper in a later occasion?
Well, first of all, I think it's wrong to pay this bill because we don't owe 6.3 million. This is ransom. We're not going to pay $6.3 million. Whatever, it's not going to happen. I don't know what would happen if we tried to reopen. I don't know what they will do. I think the feeling inside is that they would try to squash us somehow, that this is not, nobody inside believes this is a genuine tax bill, that it was really a tax bill that was never meant to be paid.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Vanahai and I'm from Cambodia. I'm living here in Japan for more than 9 years, and I just give any thought of mine to you today, and also have a question for Ms. Krisher later. I think the nervousness of the government of Cambodia is very high, so that's why they're trying to close all of the media that tell the world about the true story about Cambodia, especially the Cambodia Daily. And now they only have the one remain English newspaper, which is the Phnom Penh Post. But I think that newspaper is also a pro-government as well. And everything from the fresh news, all Cambodian all around the world, also Cambodian in the countries, they don't really rely on the news, because all the news always mix up with anything they want. That's not an accurate news. So the government purpose is trying to challenging the international community, whether how will the world community, the international community will put the pressure onto the Hun Sen government right now. And also the arrest the leader of Cambodian National Recruit Party, Mr. Kem Sokha, on the midnight of September the 3rd, also a challenging for the Cambodian people. They want to challenging the Cambodian people to lose their hope, don't go to register for the vote, for the election next year. And also the arrest the leader of Cambodian National Recruit Party, Mr. Kem Sokha, on the midnight of September the 3rd, also a challenging for the Cambodian people. They want to challenging the Cambodian people to lose their hope, don't go to register for the vote, for the election next year. And Then if the Cambodian people don't go to register for the vote, if they lose their hope, then next election will lose so tremendous voice from Cambodian people. And right now, for my thought, I think there's a lot of big country like the United States, France, the United Kingdom, Germany, a lot of people, a lot of country, democracy country, have already issued the statement to pressure the Cambodian government, but not Japan yet. Since the Paris Peace Accord that was signed on 23rd November 23rd, 1991. So now the situation in Cambodia turning back to the point which was 1990. So I would like to call for the government of Japan to issue a statement to put pressure onto the Hun Sen government. And if it is possible, I would like to asking the government of Japan to call for an immediate meeting for the signatory for the Paris Peace Accord, because it is very dangerous situation in Cambodia, and it's not going to be bad situation in only Cambodian people, but it's going to be cause the political security in Southeast Asia right now. If Cambodia is going to go further with communist style, then the political security in the region is very harmful. So I would like to call for the government of Japan to call for the immediate meeting with the signatory of the Paris Accord to provide some sort of special commissioner to go to Cambodia like 1993 to observe the process of the elections, and also to help to organize the free and fair election by 2018. If not, then Cambodia will turn back to 1990s. That's what I want to say to all of you today. And my last question, since I told you earlier that Fresh News always provides untrue news, and lately I saw the letter from the founder of the Cambodia Daily, which is your father, was circulated on media by the journalist, which was in English, no Khmer translation. And then I read it. I admire his content in the letter, but I saw a letter from yourself,
Yes.
written in Khmer and published on Fresh News. I thought it's not an appropriate term in the letter. I'm not sure whether it is a true letter or what. So I want to read the.
Yes, so I'll tell you the background. So there's this letter that to describe all the nervousness in Cambodia. On the day the Cambodian government seized our bank accounts, I got this frantic call from one of our assistants saying, Doug is going to be arrested, and Soy Sopip is going to help you. Okay, so Soy Sopip is this little, is this shouldn't say little, is this person who brokered the release of Sam Ranzi, right, many years ago. Okay. So he is an advisor to Prime Minister Hun Sen, and he likes to get in the middle of things and take credit for it. So I get this frantic, message from my assistant that says, Doug is going to be arrested, and you have to sign this letter in 2 hours, and it's all in Khmer.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what it says, and I'm really scared that my husband's going to be arrested. And apparently it's this groveling letter apologizing for everything I said.
Yeah.
So I signed it, and I will just have to disavow it because I don't speak Khmer, I don't read Khmer, I don't write Khmer. So there's this letter that's all in Khmer, and it has my signature on it. But at that time, under duress, I signed it. So that's the background of that letter.
I also heard the background as well.
Okay, so that's the background of that letter.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
But Vanna, why don't you identify yourself? You're a leader of Cambodian students here, or what is?
Okay, I'll identify myself.
Yeah.
I used to be a student here, and I graduated in 2013, and I'm working for a renewable energy here. And I used to be a former public affair officer for the Cambodian Student Association in Japan, but not now. So I'm just a company employee. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also, all of the Cambodian all around the world right now is doing demonstrations against the Hun Sen government, not in Japan. In Japan, I would like to lead the Cambodian community here to sign the petition to send to the government of Japan and asking, like what I said earlier, for Japan to call for immediate meeting for the signatory. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the Japanese government stance just worldwide has always been not to interfere with internal affairs and let things settle by themselves. But this is really a chance for Japan to show its leadership there, because Japan is one of the major donors for Cambodia. And I think it should come with certain conditions. And it's really for the improvement of Cambodia. So I agree that Japan can do a lot.
Yes,
I agree
that's
with you.
right. Yep.
Yeah.
I really need that. And I also brought the petitions to copy, and also the statement from all the big countries. So I'll circulate here if you would like to read it. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we have a few more minutes, so maybe one or two more questions. No?
I'm Rick Weisberg. I'm a scientist and friend of the Krishers for a long time. And maybe this is a stupid question, but is there a functioning judiciary in Cambodia? Is there any possibility that there could be some objective and fair evaluation of what's going on, leading to some reasonable resolution?
I would say no, there is not a proper judicial system, but we will go through it. I mean, the way you become a judge is by paying bribes. I think the first bribe is about $30,000. So even the people who are in that position, they may not have passed any kind of exam. It's really a monetary transaction that gets you that position, and then there's also a lot of corruption there. But whatever happens, we'll tell you what happens during the trial. And I also want to mention that there is a libel lawsuit against me for $200,000 for saying that the tax officials leaked the documents. Now, they are responsible for safeguarding my documents. There is no other plausible way that I can think of that they could have ended up on Fresh News. So, unless they can come up with a plausible reason that a reasonable person can believe, I'm just going to stand by my statement that those documents were leaked by the tax officials, and that is against the taxation law. There is a law that says you do not discuss or leak any kind of financial information about a person during process. So this all happened during process. So and the punishment for an official doing that is, $1,500 or 1 month in jail. So it is a crime.
Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? Okay.
How well advanced is the use of social media in Cambodia? I mean, the press seems to be rather limited, but if people want to electioneer, for instance, via social media, I've no idea.
Yes,
how many
I
people
think, Facebook is very, very popular in Cambodia. That may be the best medium to get the news out there, actually. Facebook is probably more effective than paper, and I think it's that would be the opportunity, I would say, if
So can most people afford some sort of device or not?
People everywhere have, even the poorest people have iPhones. You go to the village, and they don't have electricity in their house, but they have an iPhone. And they charge it with a car battery. They have this little, like, adapter that goes into a car battery, and they're using iPhones. I go to, like, places where there's absolutely nothing, and then there's students who have iPhones. So, and Facebook is very popular. In fact, the government scours through Facebook, and if you say something insulting about the Prime Minister on Facebook, you could get arrested. So, yeah.
Any questions? Okay. Just to wrap it up, I think it would be good to sort of finally hear a little bit more about what you're thinking going forward, what we can sort of expect, what options you're considering, what recourse you have, and whether there were other options you considered sort of right when this happened. Did you explore anything besides shutting down? It sounds like it was a sort of monstrous tax bill, but did you consider anything then? And what options do you have now going forward?
Well, we didn't intend to shut down, but we had to. I mean, we just didn't have the money to continue when the revenue stream stopped, so it was really no choice. Going forward, I don't know yet. I mean, for the Cambodia Daily, what the possibilities are. I think possibly there will be a time that something may be able to come back up. Not maybe at this very moment, but I think things will calm down in the future. Right now, my biggest concern, of course, is my husband. I'm concerned about his safety, and I'm also concerned about the children that we take care of. So I'm looking for people who can assist us, locally with the children, other NGOs, other friends who can help us during this difficult time. And I guess that's it.
Well, thank you very much for joining. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.